Some people mistake kindness for weakness. They see a quiet man, a man who minds his own business, and they assume he's a pushover. My daughter-in-law, Cindy, made that mistake on a Friday morning, and by Monday she learned a lesson she'll never forget. I've lived in Phoenix for over 43 years. I know this city like my own heartbeat. I know how the summer heat hits like a furnace door at 7 in the morning. I know the quiet rhythm of Mesquite Trail, and I know how my driveway is supposed to look every single morning. Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Get comfortable, hit that like button, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear every word of this. My name is William Scott. I'm 62. I'm a retired utility inspector living on Mesquite Trail in Phoenix, Arizona. I drive a black 2019 Ford F-150, clean, paid off, and parked in my driveway every night. That Friday, I had one thing on my schedule, a vital appointment with my cardiologist, Dr. Pullman, on East Thomas Road. I'd waited 6 weeks for that appointment. 6 weeks of calling, standing by on hold, and writing that 8:45 a.m. slot in red marker on my calendar. I went to bed Thursday with my keys on the counter, my insurance card in my wallet, and my route mapped out. I woke up at 6:30 a.m., showered, poured black coffee, and walked out my door onto Mesquite Trail at 7:50 a.m. with 55 minutes to spare. Then I stopped dead in my tracks. I stood on my porch and stared at nothing. My truck, my black F-150, was gone. The concrete slab was completely bare in the morning sun. I stood motionless, waiting for my brain to process it. I checked the garage thinking maybe I parked inside even though I knew I hadn't. I checked my phone for missed calls. Nothing. I walked back out and stared at that empty space again. Someone had taken my truck. I was dialing 911 when my phone buzzed with a text from Cindy, "Hey William, looking for something?" followed by a smirk emoji. I set my mug on the counter without spilling a drop. I dialed my son, Jimmy, in Tempe. No answer. I texted him. No question mark. It wasn't a debate. I waited 11 minutes staring at my screen, then I called Cindy. She picked up on the third ring. I heard road noise and the hum of an engine. "Cindy," I said, keeping my voice flat and ice cold. "Where is my truck?" "Oh, William," she chirped, bright and carefree. "Don't be mad. Jimmy had an early meeting, and my car was making a clicking noise. I needed to pick up my parents, Frank and Judy, from Sky Harbor Airport, and I didn't want to risk breaking down on I-10. Since your truck was just sitting there, I figured you wouldn't mind." "You took my vehicle without asking me," I said, heavy and deliberate. "I have a cardiologist appointment on East Thomas Road at 8:45. An appointment I waited 6 weeks to get. Turn my truck around and bring it back right now." I heard a heavy, impatient sigh. "Oh, can't you just reschedule, William? Or take an Uber? I'm already on the SR-51. My parents' flight lands in 20 minutes. I'll have it back by noon." "Reschedule?" My tone dropped. "You took my property without permission and you're telling me to reschedule a doctor's appointment? Bring it back before noon. Are we clear, Cindy?" That was when her real nature showed itself. Instead of apologizing, I heard a click as she switched to speakerphone. "Hey Mom, Dad, listen to this," Cindy laughed, her voice echoing in the cab of my F-150. "William's throwing a total fit. I told you he'd get cranky if he missed his morning routine." Then came a boisterous chuckle. "Frank Holloway," her father sitting in my passenger seat. "Ah, give the old guy a break, Cindy," Frank chimed in over the speakerphone, mock-soothing me like a toddler. "He's probably just cranky because he hasn't had his morning coffee yet. Relax, William, we're taking good care of your rig. We'll get it back whenever we're done grabbing breakfast." Cindy giggled, directly mocking me in front of her parents. "Yeah, William, take a chill pill. It's just a truck. Talk to you at noon." Click. She hung up. I stood in my quiet kitchen holding my silent phone. They thought I was a harmless old man who would grumble, take an Uber, and cool off by lunchtime. They thought my quiet nature was weakness. They had no idea they had just started the clock on the worst weekend of their lives. I called my neighbor, Ted Barker, who drove me to Dr. Pullman's office on East Thomas Road in his Buick. Ted waited in the parking lot the entire time. Real people show up when you need them. People like Cindy just use you when it's convenient. On the drive back, I explained what happened. Ted listened without interrupting, nodding slowly as he digested every detail. By noon, I was sitting in my recliner at home, fully expecting my black F-150 to come rolling back down Mesquite Trail. 12 o'clock came and went. Nothing. I waited until 12:15 p.m. and sent a text to my son, Jimmy. "Your wife took my truck this morning without asking. I almost missed my cardiologist appointment and it's still not back." I sat staring at my phone for 32 minutes until a reply popped up at 12:47 p.m. "Dad, relax. Lol. She's taking them to Scottsdale for lunch and to check out Old Town. She'll bring it back tonight, I promise. Lol. Relax. Lol. My own son. Moving the goalposts from noon to tonight without asking, dismissing a stolen truck with a smiley face and a laugh. I sat there in the quiet house, feeling myself pass right through anger and arrive somewhere far colder. Friday night came and went. No truck, no Cindy, no call. At 9 p.m., Jimmy sent another text. Hey Dad, her parents wanted to get dinner in Scottsdale and it got late. She'll definitely bring it back tomorrow morning, okay? Promise? Saturday morning brought nothing. Saturday afternoon, Jimmy called, sounding cheerful. Hey Dad, so Cindy's parents want to check out the galleries in Old Town Scottsdale tomorrow? And she was thinking she'd just keep the truck through the weekend since. Jimmy, I cut in, my voice dead level. Stop talking. He stopped. Your wife took my truck on Friday morning without asking. She promised noon, then she promised tonight. Now you're telling me she wants it through the weekend. Do I have that right, Dad? It's just a couple more days. Do I have that right, Jimmy? A long pause. Yeah, okay, I said. Okay, Dad, don't do anything crazy. Good night. I hung up, but I wasn't sitting idle. My next-door neighbor, Dave, has a high-definition security camera capturing the street angle. He sent me a video clip from Saturday morning. I watched in utter disbelief. There was my black F-150 pulling away. Not only was the bed crammed with Frank Holloway's heavy golf bags banging against my bedliner, but Cindy had hitched a heavy rented boat to my rear bumper. She had installed an unvetted tow hitch onto my receiver, dragging tons of weight through the desert heat without my transmission cooler being prepped, risking mechanical damage and scratching my pristine bumper. They weren't just borrowing my truck, they were abusing it, hauling luxury toys around Scottsdale, treating my personal property like a free rental service. I called Ted Barker, a retired Maricopa County Sheriff's deputy and straight shooter. Ted, I said when he picked up, if someone takes your vehicle without permission, keeps it for days, hauls heavy loads with it, and refuses to bring it back, what is that legally? A brief pause. William, legally that's unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. Depending on the circumstances, it can cross straight into grand theft auto. She's kept it through the weekend, I said flatly. And my son thinks it's a joke. Ted let out a slow breath. What are you going to do, brother? I'm going to make a phone call. Sunday morning, I took Ted's borrowed Buick and drove down to the Phoenix Police Department on West Washington Street. I sat across from an officer named Reynolds, young guy, sharp eyes, no nonsense. I laid out the timeline, showed him the video footage of the unauthorized boat hauling, and presented the paper trail of texts. Mr. Scott, Officer Reynolds said, sliding a form across the desk. You're sure you want to file a formal stolen vehicle report? Once this enters the database, any officer who spots that plate will initiate a traffic stop. My truck has been gone since Friday morning, taken without permission, I said, signing my name on the line without a shake in my hand. I've asked for it back multiple times. It's stolen. Reynolds nodded, took the paper, and entered my plate into the state system. The clock was officially ticking on Cindy Scott's Monday morning. Sunday night, I slept like a baby. No tossing, no turning, no staring at the ceiling running through worst-case scenarios. Just 6 solid hours of the deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had in months. It is amazing what a completely clear conscience does for a man's rest. I woke up on Monday morning at 6:15 a.m., made my fresh pot of black coffee, sat down at my kitchen table on Mesquite Trail, and waited. Not nervously, not anxiously, but with the quiet calm of a man who already knows how the story ends. At 6:47 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number, Phoenix area code. Mr. Scott? A woman's voice, clipped and efficient. This is dispatch with the Phoenix Police Department. We are calling to inform you that your vehicle, a black 2019 Ford F-150, has been located by Scottsdale PD officers. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Is that right? Yes, sir. Officers are currently on scene in a parking structure off Camelback Road in Scottsdale. There are individuals present with the vehicle. We need you to respond to the location. Before she could finish, my other line started buzzing violently. The caller ID flashed a name that made me smile into my coffee mug. Cindy, dispatch, I understand, I said. I'm on my way. I clicked over. Hello, Cindy. Her voice hit my ear like a smoke alarm screeching at 3 a.m, high-pitched, cracked at the edges, completely stripped of that smooth, arrogant, fake sweet tone she'd used before. William, oh my God, she shrieked, wind and background commotion howling through the speaker. There are police cruisers here. They've blocked the truck in. They're saying the truck is reported stolen. They're saying we could be arrested, William. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Cindy, I said, my voice as level as a carpenter's rule. You did. You need to call them right now and tell them it's a mistake, she sobbed, hysterically trying to talk over police radios crackling in the background. My parents are right here. They're talking about arresting us. What is happening? I let her spin. I let her panic. I let her feel every single second of the terror she had brought on herself. You took my truck without asking, I reminded her, quietly and clearly. You kept it for 4 days. You hauled heavy loads with it. You ignored every single request to bring it back. What did you think was going to happen? It was just a truck. It was a family misunderstanding, she screamed. My dad was just driving us to grab an early morning breakfast before our tea time. And right there, the situation exploded into something far worse than Cindy could have ever anticipated. Over the phone, I heard the stern voice of a Scottsdale police officer cutting through Cindy's screams. "Sir, step away from the vehicle. Keep your hands where I can see them." Then came Frank Holloway's frantic, indignant voice yelling back, "Listen here, officer. I'm a guest at the resort. I only had a few drinks at the bar last night. I'm completely fine to drive. Sir, I smell alcohol on your breath, and you were operating a vehicle reported stolen in the NCIC database," the officer replied coldly. "We are initiating a field sobriety test immediately." Cindy let out a screech into the receiver. "William, they're giving my father a DUI test. He had drinks last night and a Bloody Mary 20 minutes ago. If he gets arrested, his corporate license is gone. You have to stop this." "I didn't force your father to get behind the wheel of a stolen truck after drinking, Cindy," I said flatly. "Frank made that choice all by himself." "You cold-hearted bastard," she screamed, her voice breaking into ragged sobs. "My mother is hyperventilating on the curb. They're hooking your truck up to a heavy tow truck right now." "That's standard procedure for a stolen vehicle recovery," I informed her. "Department policy." And that was the brutal reality of the trap Cindy had set for herself. Once a vehicle is flagged in the state database as stolen, police don't just hand the keys back to whoever is standing there. The vehicle is instantly impounded, locked down, and hauled off to a secure police yard for evidence processing. Between the commercial flatbed dispatch, the municipal storage holds, the mandatory police processing fees, and the weekend surcharge, the automated towing invoice was already ticking past $2,280. $2,280. And because the vehicle was formally documented as taken without owner consent, every single penny of that impound fee was legally assigned directly to the unauthorized driver, Cindy Scott. "William, please," she begged, completely undone. "The tow driver says it's $2,200 just to release the hold. You have to pay it or tell them to drop the charges." "I am the registered owner of a stolen vehicle, Cindy," I said, setting my coffee cup down on my kitchen table with a soft thud. "I don't owe a dime for fees incurred during an unauthorized theft. Have a wonderful Monday morning." I hung up the phone. Over the next 30 minutes, my phone blew up constantly. Cindy called 9 times. Jimmy called 12 times, his text turning from cheerful to sheer desperate panic. Frank Holloway even tried calling from his cell phone twice before police confiscated it for his field sobriety evaluation. I let every single call go straight to voicemail. I calmly finished my black coffee, put my mug in the sink, walked out to my driveway, and climbed into Ted Barker's borrowed Buick. It was time to drive down to Scottsdale and watch the curtain fall on Cindy Scott's little vacation. I pulled Ted Barker's Buick into the parking structure off Camelback Road, parked it cleanly in a visitor spot, and stepped out into the bright Scottsdale morning. The scene waiting for me was absolute chaos. Cindy was standing beside a Scottsdale PD cruiser, her arms crossed tight against her chest, dark mascara running in messy rivers down her red blotchy face. Her mother, Judy, was sitting on a concrete bench nearby, frantically dabbing her eyes with a wad of soggy tissues. Frank Holloway stood off to the side with an officer, looking flushed, disheveled, and deeply humiliated after blowing a warning level on his field sobriety test. My black F-150 was already strapped onto the back of a commercial flatbed tow truck, its rear tires locked, ready to be hauled off to the municipal impound yard. I walked toward the lead officer with a steady, unhurried pace, my hands resting naturally in my pockets. The officer's nameplate read Garrett. "Mr. Scott?" Officer Garrett asked, stepping forward to meet me. "You're the registered owner of the Ford F-150? "I am, officer," I said calmly, extending my hand to shake his. "I filed the stolen vehicle report yesterday in Phoenix." Before Garrett could respond, a silver sedan pulled into the structure with its tires screeching. The door flew open before the car even came to a complete stop, and my son Jimmy tumbled out. He sprinted toward us, his face a wild storm of panic, anger, and utter confusion. "Dad?" Jimmy shouted, his voice echoing off the concrete pillars as he ran up to me. "Dad, what the hell is this? Why are you doing this? This is insane." I turned slowly and looked at my son. "Hello, Jimmy, are you serious right now?" Jimmy yelled, waving his arms frantically toward the tow truck and his weeping mother-in-law. "You called the cops on my wife? You reported your own family for stealing a truck? Look at them, Dad, look at what you did." I didn't blink. I stood there as solid as an oak tree, looking directly into my son's frantic eyes. "Jimmy, I texted you on Friday morning. I texted you on Friday afternoon. I called you on Saturday. What did you say to me every single time?" Jimmy opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "You told me to relax, lol," I said, my voice dropping into an ice-cold, dangerous register. "You told me your wife was taking my truck to Scottsdale, and that she'd bring it back whenever she felt like it. You thought I was just an old man who got worked up, made some noise, and ultimately moved out of the way." I stepped half an inch closer to him. "You thought I was a man who could be managed with a smiley face emoji. You thought wrong." "Dad, it's just a misunderstanding," Jimmy pleaded, his eyes going glassy. "She was just borrowing it." Borrowing requires permission, Jimmy, I replied flatly. Taking a vehicle off a man's driveway without asking, keeping it for 4 days, hauling a boat with it, and ignoring every demand to return it isn't borrowing, it's theft. Just then, Frank Holloway shoved his way past the second officer. His face beat red with rage as he pointed a trembling finger at my chest. "You cold-hearted, bitter old bastard," Frank roared, his voice booming through the garage. "You set my daughter up. You ruined our vacation. You humiliated my wife. And you tried to get me thrown in jail over a damn pickup truck." Officer Garrett stepped between us immediately. "Sir, step back right now." I didn't flinch. I looked right past Officer Garrett's shoulder, locking eyes with Frank Holloway, and then turned directly to Garrett. "Officer Garrett," I said, my voice perfectly clear and recorded on his body camera. "I want to make something officially documented right now. This man, Frank Holloway, and his daughter, Cindy Scott, are formally barred from setting foot on my residential property at Mesquite Trail in Phoenix. I am issuing an official trespassing notice against both of them today. If either of them steps onto my driveway or my lawn, I want them arrested immediately." Frank's jaw dropped in absolute shock. "You can't do that." "I just did," I said flatly. I turned back to Jimmy, who stood there completely paralyzed, watching the father-in-law he tried so hard to impress get legally banned from my home. "The towing bill is $2,280, Jimmy," I told my son quietly. "That bill belongs entirely to your wife. And when I finally pick my truck up from the impound lot tomorrow morning, I will be putting a heavy-duty steering wheel lock on it. Furthermore, I'll be taking back my house key from you today." "Dad?" Jimmy whispered, his voice cracking as the full weight of his enabling finally crushed him. "Please, so we never have this problem again," I said, patting his shoulder once. Behind me, Cindy let out a broken, disbelieving sob. "Jimmy, do something," she cried out. And my son stood there on the cold concrete floor, surrounded by police officers and flashing red lights, and said absolutely nothing. Before I left that parking structure on Camelback Road, Officer Garrett pulled me aside near the rear of my flatbed-bound truck. The garage was quiet now, except for the low hum of the tow truck's idling diesel engine. Jimmy was over by Cindy's sedan, trying to stop her mother from hyperventilating, and Frank Holloway was leaning sullenly against a pillar, glaring at the floor. "Mr. Scott," Officer Garrett said, keeping his voice low and professional, the way officers speak when they're passing along official information off the record. "I need to share something with you regarding the statement your daughter-in-law filed on scene." I stood still, resting my hands in my pockets. "I'm listening, officer." In her signed statement to Scottsdale PD, Mrs. Scott formally claimed that you gave her verbal permission to take the F-150 on Friday morning, Garrett said, looking at me with an even unblinking gaze. "She stated that you handed her the keys during a phone conversation before she left your driveway." I stared at him for 2 seconds, a cold smile touching the corners of my mouth. She hadn't just taken my truck without asking. She had lied straight to a law enforcement officer on an official police report to save her own skin. "She put that in writing?" I asked. "She signed it under penalty of perjury," Garrett confirmed, without saying another word. I pulled my phone from my flannel shirt pocket, unlocked the screen, and handed it directly to Officer Garrett. I opened the text thread from Friday morning. There it was, stamped with precise digital timestamps, Cindy's text at 7:52 a.m. "Hey William, looking for something?" Sent 20 minutes after she had already driven my truck off Mesquite Trail. Then my reply at 8:01 a.m. explicitly demanding my vehicle back for my cardiologist appointment, followed by Jimmy's dismissal texts and Cindy's complete radio silence. Garrett scrolled through the thread, reading every single message, his jaw tightening slightly. "There's no verbal authorization here," he noted, handing the phone back. "In fact, she explicitly admits to taking it without contacting you first. No permission, no phone call, nothing," I said flatly. "She made it up on the spot when your officers blocked her in. Making a false statement in an official police report is a Class 1 misdemeanor in Arizona, Mr. Scott," Garrett said carefully. "It carries potential criminal penalties. I'm documenting this contradiction in my supplemental report." I drove Ted's Buick straight from Scottsdale to an office building on North Central Avenue in Phoenix. I had a 1 p.m. appointment with a lawyer named Roger Patton, a civil litigator and family law surgeon whom Ted Barker had recommended. Roger was a sharp man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses, a calm demeanor, and a reputation for dismantling entitled people with precise paperwork. I sat across from Roger in his wood-paneled office and laid out every single piece of evidence. The initial text messages, the stolen vehicle report, the towing invoice, the trespassing notice, and Cindy's false police statement. Roger listened in complete silence, taking notes with a silver fountain pen. When I finished, he set his pen down and leaned back in his leather chair. "Mr. Scott, this isn't just a clean case," Roger said with a thin, sharp smile. "It's squeaky. Your daughter-in-law dug herself a hole, and then she handed the police the shovel." I want the $2,280 towing fee reimbursed to the exact cent, I said. And I want her to understand that actions have real consequences. Oh, it gets much better than just the towing fee, William, Roger replied, pulling up a digital file on his computer screen. My paralegal ran a preliminary check on the transaction receipts attached to the impound hold and gas records. Do you know how Cindy paid for the fuel, toll passes, and detailing fees while she was driving your truck around Scottsdale all weekend? I looked at him. How? She used a corporate credit card issued by her employer, Roger revealed, turning his monitor toward me. A corporate card designated strictly for her company's client entertainment expenses. Using a corporate card to fund unauthorized personal travel, gas for a stolen vehicle, and private resort expenses constitutes gross corporate financial fraud and credit abuse. If her employer's compliance department gets wind of a police report linked to corporate card charges on a stolen vehicle, she won't just be facing a misdemeanor. She'll be facing immediate termination for cause. I leaned back in my chair, taking that in. Cindy had been so intoxicated by the illusion of luxury that she'd used her company's credit card to parade her parents around Scottsdale in my stolen truck. I want a formal demand letter sent immediately, I told Roger. Itemized, legally binding, demanding full reimbursement of the $2,280 within 14 days, and attach a copy of her false police statement alongside her own text messages, side by side. Consider it done, Roger said, picking up his pen. Let's see how arrogant she feels when she reads this on Thursday afternoon. On Thursday afternoon, Roger Patton's office sent the formal demand package via certified mail straight to Jimmy and Cindy's house on Dunbar Street in Tempe. It wasn't just a polite request for money. It was a legal freight train wrapped in an official envelope. Inside was an itemized invoice for the $2,280 towing and impound fees, alongside a copy of the official police report, the corporate credit card transaction receipts, and, most devastating of all, a side-by-side comparison exhibit. On the left side was a printed copy of Cindy's signed statement to Scottsdale PD, claiming I gave her verbal authorization. On the right side were her own timestamped text messages from Friday morning, explicitly proving she took the truck without asking and ignored my demands to return it. The package arrived on Friday morning. By 2 p.m., my phone rang. It was Jimmy. But the tone of his voice was completely unrecognizable from the man who had texted me lol 7 days earlier. The casual arrogance, the dismissive attitude, the frantic defense of his wife, all of it had been completely hollowed out. He sounded broken, exhausted, and deeply shaken. Dad, Jimmy whispered, his voice trembling over the line. I just read the letter from Mr. Patton. I know, I said quietly, sitting at my kitchen table on Mesquite Trail. She lied to me, Dad, Jimmy choked out, a raw sob breaking through his throat. All weekend, every time you called, every time you texted, Cindy swore to me on her life that you gave her permission on Friday morning. She told me you were just throwing a temper tantrum because you missed your coffee. She sat next to me in my car and swore to God that you said it was fine for her to take the truck to Scottsdale. A heavy, painful silence hung between us over the line. I believed her, Dad. Jimmy wept softly. I took her side against my own father because I thought you were just being unreasonable. And then I read her statement to the police, and I looked at her texts to you. She lied to the cops, she lied to me, and she tried to frame you for a felony just to cover up her own arrogance. Now you see the truth, Jimmy, I said, my voice firm but without cruelty. People who treat kindness as weakness will lie to anyone who gets in their way, including you. I'm so sorry, Dad, Jimmy said, his voice cracking completely. I am so sorry for every text I sent you. I should have driven over to your house on Friday morning and checked on you myself. I failed you as a son. You made a mistake by trusting a liar, Jimmy, I replied. Now you have to decide what kind of man you're going to be going forward. She asked me to take $2,300 out of our joint savings account to pay Mr. Patton's demand letter, Jimmy said, his tone turning ice cold as he revealed the next chapter of the collapse. I looked her dead in the eye and locked our joint bank accounts. I told her I won't spend a single dime of my hard-earned salary to clean up her criminal fraud. That was the moment Cindy's luxury illusion crumbled into dust. Facing a strict 14-day legal deadline from Roger Patton and a formal notice from the Maricopa County District Attorney's Office regarding her Class 1 misdemeanor false police report, Cindy was completely trapped. The DA offered her a single way out to avoid formal criminal charges and jail time, a binding diversion agreement. Under the terms of the agreement, Cindy had to sign a formal written admission of guilt acknowledging that she lied to law enforcement officers, pay all restitution in full, remain on supervised probation for 12 months, and have her name permanently logged in the county criminal diversion database. With Jimmy refusing to give her a single penny from their bank account and her parents fleeing back to Chicago in shame after Frank's humiliating DUI investigation, Cindy had only one asset left to raise fast cash. On Tuesday morning, She drove to a jewelry buyer in downtown Tempe and sold her prized 3-carat diamond anniversary ring, the very symbol of the luxury lifestyle she loved to flaunt on social media, for a fraction of its value. 2 days later, a certified, trackable envelope arrived at my mailbox on Mesquite Trail. Inside was a cashier's check for exactly $2,280 drawn under Cindy Scott's name, accompanied by a signed copy of her formal police admission paper. Attached was a small handwritten note that read simply, "Paid in full." I held that check in my hand under the warm Phoenix sun, feeling the solid weight of absolute justice. She had tried to treat my life like her personal playground, and in the end, her own arrogance had stripped her of her pride, her luxury, and her lies. I took the certified cashier's check for $2,280 straight to my bank on East Thomas Road, deposited it into my account, and walked back out into the bright November sunshine. The air in Phoenix had finally cooled down, carrying that crisp, clear desert breeze that makes living in Arizona worth every single scorching summer day. I drove my black 2019 Ford F-50 down Mesquite Trail, enjoying the deep, familiar rumble of the engine under the hood. The truck had been detailed, washed, and thoroughly inspected. I pulled into my driveway, shifted into park, and set the emergency brake. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, looking out at my quiet neighborhood, watching the palm trees sway gently in the breeze. Then I attached a heavy-duty, hardened steel steering wheel lock across the wheel. Not because I was paranoid, but because a man who respects his hard-earned property takes the necessary steps to secure it. I stepped out, locked the doors, and stood on my front porch, looking down at that black F-150 resting right where it belonged, exactly where it always belonged. The house was quiet, peaceful, and filled with a deep sense of order. For 43 years, I've built a life based on simple, unshakable values: hard work, honesty, respect, and protecting what's yours. Cindy thought she could ride roughshod over those values because I didn't shout or wave my arms when she pushed me. She mistook my patience for weakness and my quiet nature for fear. In the end, she paid for that mistake with her diamond ring, her pride, and a permanent mark on a county criminal diversion record. 3 weeks later, on a cool Thursday evening, I met my son Jimmy for dinner at Lupe's Cantina on 7th Street. It's an old-school Mexican joint with red vinyl booths and neon signs that we've been going to since he was 17 years old. We ordered our usual, the carnitas plate, warm flour tortillas, and a basket of fresh chips and salsa. We didn't talk about the truck for the first hour. We talked about his job, the upcoming holiday schedule, and his grandfather's vintage wristwatch that he wanted to get repaired at a local jeweler. It felt good to just sit across from my son, hear his voice, and see the heavy weight lifting off his shoulders. Toward the end of the meal, as the waiter cleared our plates, Jimmy set his glass of ice water down on the table, looked me straight in the eye, and took a slow breath. "Dad," Jimmy said, his voice quiet, steady, and filled with a newfound maturity I hadn't heard in years. "I want you to know something." I told Cindy clearly that if anything like this ever happens again, with you, with my family, or with anyone else's property, I won't be standing by her side to defend it. I set firm, non-negotiable boundaries in my marriage. She understands now that my respect for you and for the truth comes before her ego. I held my son's gaze for a long moment. I saw a man who had grown up, a man who had learned a painful but necessary lesson about accountability and self-respect. I didn't need a grand speech or 100 apologies. "I appreciate that, Jimmy," I said, reaching across the table and giving his shoulder a firm, supportive squeeze. "That's all a father ever wants to hear." We split the check, walked out into the cool desert night, and gave each other a strong hug before getting into our vehicles. I drove home down Central Avenue, turned onto Mesquite Trail, and pulled my Ford F-150 back onto my concrete driveway. I locked the truck, walked up my porch steps, and looked back one last time under the golden glow of the streetlights. Some people look at a quiet man and assume he's easy to push around. They see restraint and call it fear. They think they can take what isn't theirs, send a smiley face or a dismissive message, and expect you to move out of the way. But a quiet man isn't a finished man. Real strength doesn't scream, shout, or make a scene. Real strength stands on solid principle, holds the line, and lets the law do the heavy lifting. My name is William Scott, and in my house, on my street, what's mine stays mine, always. If you enjoyed this story of real justice and setting firm boundaries, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below letting me know where in the world you're watching from today, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode on Dad's Ultimate Payback. Stay strong, stand your ground, and I'll see you on the next one.